welcome to DCSAACI's literary wing of interviewing authors of books and getting to know about all the literature that surrounds our Indian community and the diaspora over here. Today, we have as our guest a very young woman who has written a wonderful book. The title is Morsels of Purple, and our author today is Sarah, she corrected me, Sarah Siddiqui Chansarkar. Welcome, Sarah, to DC SAF's literary celebration of all your creativity, someone like you and all the other authors we have on board from time to time. Good morning.
Good morning, Mira. Thanks for having me here.
That's wonderful. Let's begin at the beginning because the audience may not know much about you unless they have read up your background. Tell us about how it all began and a little bit about your background so we get to know you.
All right. I am Sara Siddiqui Chansarkar, and I was born, raised, educated in India. And my husband and my son and I immigrated to the US. We moved around 16 years ago to the US. And I don't have a background in literature or writing, so I have a science background. I have an electronics engineering degree, and that's the field I work in. That's my day job. I am an IT manager, and that's where I spend all my daytime. And writing is my hobby and my passion. So whenever I get some time, I write, and I write short fiction because that's what fits in my schedule. So whenever I get a few minutes, I don't have to write words and chapters of a novel. I just can write a short story, like maybe from 100 to maybe 1,000 words, and then that's how I started writing. That okay, I'll just send them out for publication. And I was amazed by the response when literary magazines really wanted to publish. I'm like, okay, maybe it's getting serious now. So then, and this book really, Morsels of Purple, this is my book.
Yes.
So this book, I had not really planned on writing the book. I was just writing these short stories. And when I took a pause and looked at all the stories, I thought I had enough for a book. And then I thought of just compiling them together. And that's how this came into existence.
That's brilliant. It's like, I feel when just finished your book, and thanks to our founder, Manoj Singh and Geeta Singh, who run this whole show, and he sent me the book and I got to read it. It's like you've woven pearls of 54 beads together in a string, and the clasp is what I feel is a common thread of emotion that runs through all of it, and it's just beautiful. I love all of those. For audience that has not read this book, I would highly recommend getting it and reading it. It has 54 little stories that she's put together. They may seem disconnected to each other, but honestly, they're the underlying emotional travail that goes through every story is just beautiful. It's in India, in the theater world, they call it Navarasa, which is the 9 emotions, basically in dance and theater. But this highlights probably a little bit of more than 9, I would say, multiplied by several different emotions that hits you when you read it. So when you decided to compile this as a book, was it a thought that came to you by yourself, or did somebody encourage you to do that?
So I joined Twitter, I think 3 or 4 years, and that's where I followed so many authors and I saw what they were doing. And I sort of, because I don't have any friends who are writers, or I don't belong to a writing community. So I just followed those people and saw how they were submitting to places. I started doing that. And whenever I publish something, I promote it on Twitter, say, here's my story, here's my story. And that's how a publisher approached me that, hey, we love your stories. Are you interested in doing a collection? And that's when it struck me that probably there is something in there that is resonating with people. And, maybe it's good enough to be put into a collection.
That's great. Now, I can't not ask you this question, which is um, some of the stories seem autobiographical and many others biographical. I mean, basically, writers, we write what life experiences teach us. So would you say that is correct, or would you just say that you absorbed everything around you and put it down?
You're absolutely correct, Mira, because some stories are autobiographical, but not purely, because in
Yeah.
order to make it a story, you have to add a certain element of surprise, or a certain ending or a certain texture to it. Because if you write mundane life, it doesn't bring out a spark like that. It
Hmm.
might for some, but for example, Dear Abu, where the story is about my father, about a father dying, that is autobiographical mostly, but there is some element there. So I would say hybrid, some of them are. And as you rightly said, as writers, we draw inspiration from our own experiences, and then it's imagination after that, that where does it lead to. Maybe the ending that happened for me might have been different for some other person. So I think it's experience combined with some imagination, but some are purely fictional, like I have nothing to do with them, but it's again observation.
Right.
Maybe I saw something at a restaurant or at a movie, or any book I read that inspired that maybe there is a kernel of a story there. So some are purely fictional, but there is some level of truth in every single one of
Right. And speaking of Abu, since you brought it up, the story, I haven't memorized all the titles of your 54 little stories, but the one where Abu's waiting for Guddu, I loved how it's just a narrative of things happening. And then suddenly the last line just hits you when he accepts his daughter. That
them.
was just beautiful after the visit to Taj Mahal. I think that was
Yeah.
lovely. Would you like to say something about that story?
Yeah, so that story there, that's again based on reality, and that is, I took my husband and I, both of us, my father wanted to see the Taj Mahal. We took him. It wasn't that he didn't accept me or something, because he said take me there. But I just made it into a fiction, that because there are people, there are girls who are not accepted. So I am
Yeah.
lucky. I was fortunate enough that my father loved me and he asked me that, hey, take me to the Taj Mahal. But there are families
Yes.
like that I know of, that where girls are treated as a second grade child, or there is a lot of discrimination going around. Of course, in our families and societies, that's still there, which shouldn't be, but it is. And so that's how that story came into being. And sometimes I'm chastised by my mother when she says, "Hey, we never treated you like that. Why do you write in your stories?" I said, "Yeah, Ma, I know you did not, but it's somebody's truth, even if it's not mine."
That's true. That's very true. And I love how you have interspersed stories of different cities in the US and as well as in India, and all the rituals and practices of both of those places, that they fall into place in your, in a individual niche in each story. And that's very beautiful. So how long have you lived in India? Because many of your Indian narratives must be something, stories you've heard from others or you've seen, because you came here after spending some time there, right?
Yes, so my whole education has been in India. Then after marriage, then that's when I came here with my husband and my son, who was 2 years old at that time.
Okay,
So
that
that's when I
explains.
came here, and
Mhm.
I make it a point to visit every year, or every year mostly. I try to go there because of the COVID. Last time it was extended to 2 years, but
True.
it's not that I don't go for stretches of time like 5 years, 10 years. I go there every year to visit my mom and my father when he was alive, and my sisters and brothers. So
Right.
it's, I'm very much into this. The happenings and the things that are happening in my country.
Hmm. And you mentioned earlier about there's no point writing about mundane stuff without adding a little fiction. But I thought this, for me, that the story that spoke to me, maybe because I've seen many go through that, is the mundane one, the mundaneness that you pointed out about the American dream for
Hmm.
immigrants. It just hits you because it's just a simple mundane narrative of the existentialism of most immigrants who come here and achieve the dream, and then full circle, which is the wind of your life.
Yeah.
And I think that that was I loved it because that speaks to pretty much all immigrants who come here with a dream and go step by step from nothing to everything, and then again end up with having everything and but left with nothingness. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, so that story has many, many elements of truth in it. So, like when I came, to the US, and if you remember, there is a point where my son is a 2 year old, and he runs to the balcony of my apartment when I'm just running after him to change the diaper, and he pees at the
Hmm.
balcony, and that dribbles down into the
She knocks on.
neighbors. Yes, because they were wooden slats. So
Yes.
it dribbled down to the neighbor's balcony who lived in the apartment down below, and she yelled at me, and I like, oh my gosh, where am I? What am I doing here? Because in India people will be like, okay, bacha hai, it's
Ah,
fine, bacche karte hain. But here it's not acceptable.
yeah.
And yes, so that's really autobiographical in that
Yes.
sense. And then, of course, the Corolla is also autobiographical because that's my husband really bought it with
Mhm.
$5,000 that the employer paid him, and that's when we went to Niagara Falls. And then of course there are fictional elements after that.
Right.
But yeah, that's true for so many people. Like, we come here dreaming of so many good things, and we have you know skies of that, okay, it'll be so the land of plenty, as they say, and we achieve all that because
Right.
we through our hard work, right? Because
Yes.
that's what Indians do, will work hard towards our
Yeah.
goal, and we achieve all that. And then, but then there is something nagging at the back of our minds.
Hmm.
Then we try so hard to blend and to the environment, to adapt, but then there is this loneliness that
Hmm.
is always there is that something. And then at the end of life, when the life goes a full circle, then you realize that
Right.
maybe it was all good or not, but yeah, that's what life is for us.
But for somebody who reads keenly, I would, I shouldn't give it out, but I will, where you begin each paragraph with how the wind either blows your hair or it's still. And then it,
Yes.
it follows with the incidental, anecdotal narrative. And I love that story. For me, I love that. I think
Thank you, Mira.
could relate to it too, because that's
Thank
the
you, Mira.
story of many an immigrant. And the one thing I wanted to say, the commonality I found in many of the stories is like Robin Williams had said, you can be very alone in a crowd. So you describe all these relationships and these, but in many stories, the woman is left alone despite being with everybody.
Yes.
Want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so that's that loneliness, especially for the immigrant, population, the immigrants who come to the country. As I said, like, we try to adapt, and but there's that missing that family connection, that brothers and sisters and your parents, that's always there. And and then the death is also reality. It's just the most irreversible, truth
Mm-hmm.
of life. So when you pick up the phone, and then you see that, hey, so some aunt expired, and then you go to the country again, and you know that, hey, these are voids that have been created
Right.
while I was away. So many things have happened. So although you might appear and trudge on with your life, you're happy and you're achieving and you're earning, and you're going about adding material goods. You buy a house, you buy a car, you buy whatever you want to, but at the back of the mind, that thing is there, that maybe the guilt or that void of missing out on what's going on in your country. That's where I think for me the loneliness lies.
Right.
Yeah,
And
because
also,
I have and everybody, I think we make friends here, and friends become family, and we go to meet each other, and we take care of each other. But that that if you're missing the family part, that's the root cause of
absolutely.
loneliness, in my opinion.
Yes. And as a Sudanis, we are very social animals. I mean, it, when you go back, sometimes it's too much to the extreme where it's like everybody's in your face. But then you also realize you miss some of it when you come here. But also, I wanted to extend that to the point where you have several stories where the spousal relationship, where just it's coexistence, it becomes after a while. And there are several stories touching on that aspect. And the loneliness felt probably more by the woman, especially the story about first the husband who tries to escape her by driving away, and then finally the son learns to drive, and you end
Yeah,
with him driving away, because
yeah,
can't handle the home situation, the reality of conflicts.
yeah. That's true. I mean, because relationships is what makes us human. If it's not for because you might have whatever material possessions that you have, but if the relationship with your spouse or your partner is not solid, and that's when you just feel all alone. And that's true for relationships because if they can either create a heaven or it can make everything in life a hell. So that's where I touch upon that. And it's women because, and I'm not saying that men don't feel the same, but
Right.
because for this collection, I've just pulled stories where main characters are women. I have also
Mhm.
written stories with men as the main characters, but for this, because the underlying thread through
Yes.
the story, this collection is women characters and how they react and the challenges that they face in day-to-day life. That's why I picked those kind of stories. So
Right.
yes, relationships, abandonment,
Right.
or the desire. The sometimes it's the desire in a woman or a man that remains unsatisfied. That's also reality, and
Yes.
I've not shied away from writing about that. In some of the stories, I clearly mentioned that.
Which is
There's
wonderful.
yeah.
Which is wonderful because that is the reality. And also, I like the a couple of stories where the relationship between the mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, like two women that you pointed out. And I must specifically mention the mango story, which I loved. As sad as I felt at the end, I was delighted she did what she did. I'm sorry to say, but I think that was a kind of poignant story about young woman coming and being deprived and
Yep.
finally getting a chance. That, I think, that was a good one. And even the Nani story. Tell me about the Nani story.
Oh, Nani's song. Okay, so that was inspired when I visited India and I was in a train and that was a true story that really there was a woman who was singing that song and people were placing money in her palms, and then when the train stops at a station she goes and smokes a bidi because I saw that really happen. The last part didn't happen. That is
Mhm.
made up. That's fiction where I say that she handed the baby to another woman. That didn't happen, but really I was left wondering that whether the child is hers or not. If it's
Yes.
her child, would she smoke really, or she just had borrowed a child just to evoke sympathy among the passengers so they could just give her some money? So yeah, that was a true story, and they do like sometimes they will sing the songs like chalte chalte
Mhm.
and zindagi ke safar mein, because
Yeah.
you're going on a journey in a train and they just pick
Yeah.
the relevant songs. And so
It
so
touches your heart.
it touch your heart,
Yeah.
yes. It tugs at your heart, and then you are forced. If you think like, oh yeah, oh, this poor woman, the baby is asking for, the baby's hungry, because the faces and how they look so dirty, and I
Yeah.
don't know in real life they might be, but it's just a picture to
Yeah.
to touch your heart and evoke your sympathy, which I felt okay, that's okay, but to involve a child in that,
Mhm.
that's just not right. So
But
it's about,
it's true. It happens. It happens in
yes,
India. Yeah.
because as you know, it's a big business. People will even maim and hurt people to make them
Mhm.
beggars, and then
Mhm.
at the end of the day they'll take everything that they earned and give them a small, just a meal or maybe some part of it.
Yeah.
So that's so
I
true.
think that was a good. It seemed like an honest, true portraiture of Nani. So it struck me as this really nice narrative about that
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
And there was one story. It's a very short one, and I that's the one I couldn't quite get it. Where she's standing facing the ocean, and she's probably almost. I thought she was a statue where everybody gives her arms, and then the bazaar spreads around her, and the beggars sit and beg, and she's looking at the ocean, and it ends with, "When will you take me?" So, what was that?
Yeah, so that's I've been asked about that story by a couple people. That story is titled I Wait. So now how that came into being was I was my husband and I, we were at a trip in Canada at Stanley Park, and there is really a brass statue there, and the
Oh,
statue is of a girl who's just sitting. It's a statue, it's not a real person, but it's sitting on the cliff overlooking the water, and she's just gazing into the sea, and there is a bird perched on top of her head. So that's where I thought that, that okay, this could be, how can I make it into a story? Then I came back home and I wrote about that's a real person who's standing there, and the lover has been taken by the sea. So in front of
okay.
her eyes, the waves wash her husband away, or partner, whoever, the
Hmm.
lover, away. And then she is just waiting for the person right there, and she just stands there day and night, and people have made her into like as a lighthouse, as a cornerstone of something, and people just gather around her because she's the permanent fixture there, and she just keeps
Right,
on waiting, and she keeps shaming the sea. She just wants the sea to return the husband back.
right.
So
Yeah, that
it's
was my
pure
dilemma.
imagination.
I wasn't, yeah. My dilemma was, is she real or is she a statue? That's what, and I haven't been to Stanley first, so I wouldn't know. But that was, I think that was well done. There was another one about to me, it was mystical. Remember the old woman who was injured and the couple come, high fundine, they look like upscale couple who come to visit her. It's kind of very mysterious.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, the rotting.
Yes. I'm
So
sorry I
that
haven't memorized your titles because there were too many of them. But
I know.
in the end, there's just a little clue about the photograph, burnt photograph. Ah,
Yeah, so that's also a story that many people talk to me about, because it's not very, very obvious that who's talking here and what's going on. So I kind of, that is actually the house speaking. That's not a woman,
okay.
it's
All
the
right. Now
house.
it falls into place because I
Yeah.
thought she was somebody that they had employed, but she was so into the traditional aspect of living that she took away the burnt photograph and tried to save it. Okay. Now
So that's the house speaking. So what happens is that a new people come to buy the house. They look around, they knock at her. That's what
ah,
I it's like. They knock at the sides and check whether whether the house is in the good condition or not. And then she thinks about the first owners of the house. So
okay.
those were the people who were there and who were very much in love, but they fought so much in the house that they threw things at the house, and the house was broken. There were
Damage.
scars or places where it's broken. That's where it was bandaged. So,
Ah,
so the house was now evaluating this new couple, that are they in love? Are they good enough? And it's there is a mystical, or a surreal
absolutely.
element to it, that
Yes.
she holds her breath. Like, what I wanted to portray was that the marriage of the earlier couple was rotting inside the house,
Hmm.
and she just holds her breath, so that the new person, the new people, won't experience it. They don't, experience the stench of that relationship that was rotting inside.
Right.
But then once she's thought that, okay, these people are buying the house, they are my new owners. So then she lets out that exhale, and that's where they smell that stench, and they just go away, because like this is not the house for us.
Ah,
So
very. Oh my God. I'm
that
glad you clarified that because for me, I was thinking this will be a very, almost mystical short film it can make because, I was trying to figure out, who is she? But now it makes sense. It makes total sense. That was beautiful. Now let's go to what is your favorite? I mean, there are 54, and I'm sure you've written 500 more, or it's in your head. But which is would you be able to pick as the most favorite?
let me think. Some of them are really very close to my heart. Like, there is one about an Eid outfit for my brother.
Oh, wow, that's, yeah, that is
So
beautiful.
that's again in based on reality, that my cousin, my aunt's son, he disappeared, years ago, and he has never been found.
Oh,
So and so that is the reality. But after that, all that I make, that the mom is stitching clothes, and she's making the sevai for Eid and all that, and still waiting for her. That is waiting for the son. That is all made up, but it's based on reality. And I just was surprised where the story was going. But I just started writing. I didn't know where it was going. I said, okay, let's, because my background, I'm a Muslim, so Eid is a very,
Yeah.
a special occasion for all of us.
Hmm.
So I thought of basing a story on that holiday. So, and I just started writing about same way that, okay, because that's a thing that mothers do, all the women do. They cook sevai on Eid. So I
Right.
started doing that and say, okay, there'll be a daughter, and then somehow that cousin somehow entered into my subconscious, like, oh my god, why don't I make it a story of a woman missing her son who's been lost for five
Yes.
years
Yeah.
So that's
It's
the
very heart wrenching.
thing,
It's heart
very
wrenching.
heart wrenching.
Yeah.
And all the things that I mentioned there, that the father going to so many places,
Hmm.
Agra to Delhi to Dargahs and to Sufis, and people just, it's just such a desperate need, of course,
Yeah.
that because to get your son back, that they did everything they could.
Hmm.
So they went to so many fakirs, and all across religions. Basically, it's not
Right.
that they just went to, but whoever would said that, okay, we'll help bring your son back. They went there and they bought all those threads that they tied, and birds. They fed some grains to birds. Every single thing they did, but somehow the son did not come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
That
so
was heart wrenching.
yeah, so
Definitely. Yeah. And even
yeah,
the other story, it's very simple. I mean, the beauty is in its simplicity, but it's so deep. Where the mom sews all night so she can buy the gold earring for her kid, and she's always been wearing silver, and she thought people notice, and then she wears gold and nobody notices. It's in the larger scheme of things, it's, I feel it speaks to our materialism, because log kya kahenge, we keep doing stuff for log
yes,
kya kahenge, and at the end of the day nobody cares.
right.
So
Yeah, that was the thing. So yeah, I think that came when I saw, maybe because I keep on looking through websites, and writing some websites. So I think there was a prompt, somebody mentioned that why don't you write something that is very old, something that you own, it's very old for. Then I thought about the gold earrings that my mom bought for me. So that's when the story started. But of course, it wasn't that I asked her for it, and
yeah,
some
no.
people were saying that, you don't have gold earrings. And it was all made up. The drama is all made up, that, she points to her ears during the class, during the school, and she
Yeah.
wants people to notice. That drama is all made up to make it into a story. But the emotion is, but it's reality,
Yeah,
because people notice when you don't have something. They'll say that, you don't
exactly.
have this, for example, the girl wore silver, and
Mm.
everybody noticed, and the mother noticed too. And then she said, okay, now I have what I need to gel with others, so that I can be identical to them. And she wears gold, which her mother very painstakingly stitched clothes into the night to buy her
Mhm.
that gold. And she eventually wears the gold, and she loves the earrings, but nobody noticed the sparkle. And that's that the whole effort is, I mean, it seems like it was in just in vain.
Right.
Right.
And that's what, that is a simplistic story about a little girl, but then it speaks to the larger uh, the way we exist as humans,
Right.
are, we are always doing stuff to be on par with peers, whether
Right.
it's in school or whether families or whether we buy big mansions. It's always, to
Yeah,
match up to materialistic things, to the class we live in. And at the
yeah,
end of the day, when you have it all, doesn't matter.
exactly. So buy a bigger car, buy a bigger house, buy better clothes, designer brands, and all that. And however much we tell ourselves that, we pretend to be wise, that hey, we know it's of no use, but we still do it.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So, would you like to read some, a couple of stories or some excerpts of your choice
Uh,
from your book?
yeah, probably I'll read a, s- a small, because I know we we wouldn't have. So okay, I'll read this one. The
Yeah, we have
morning chai.
time. So if you have, you absolutely go ahead and read your story. I'd love to hear.
Okay.
I've read it, but I'd love to hear from you reading it.
Okay. So I'll read this one first, the morning chai. So
Mm-hmm.
this one again came into existence when I was making chai, and I was thinking about how some people like it scalding hot, and some
Mm-hmm.
people wait it for it to cool down and then before drinking it. Like it's true for my husband and I. When I have the tea, I wanted to pour it into my cup right away, and because I don't want to it to lose the littlest bit of warmth. I
Yeah,
want it
me
super
too.
hot. You too? Yeah.
In fact, I
And
read most of your book. I read with morning hot garam garam chai, and I laughed at that one
yeah.
because I don't like cold chai.
And my husband is like, I like, here's the chai. Like, okay, let it cool down. I said, what's the point of having chai if you are waiting for it to cool down? There's just no
Exactly.
point. So, so yeah, I'll read the story. The morning cup of chai made the right way. No instance for me. A cup of water at a rolling boil on the flame. A teaspoon of Taj Mahal tea leaves, bleeding their color, releasing their aroma into the pot, followed by 1/4 cup of milk to temper the bitterness of thine, to lend an endurable hue to my day. A strainer held over the mug to filter out the spent tea granules. The first sip, seething hot, awakens. The second enlivens. The others that follow are tepid and insipid. If I don't tell my mind what it is that I'm ingesting, I might gag. Much like marriage. After the first few weeks, when passion turns lukewarm, the togetherness becomes routine, the days and nights prosaic. But I try. I straighten my hair, trim it to frame my face, get streaks or curls added sometimes, wear aqua or cocoa eyeliner sometimes, just as I add different spices to my chai, cinnamon, cloves, or cardamom. But he's set in his manner and his choice of beverage. Coffee at the press of a button, always black, always bitter.
I love it. If you're with your permission, may I read another one which is very short and it is brilliant, I think.
Okay,
It's
yes.
called Finding My Marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I look in the blobs of foam and facial hair in the sink, the balls of kids' socks under the beds, the dregs of coffee in your mug, the crumbs of Cheerios and walnuts on the floor, the Lego blocks poking my soles on the stairs, the tracks of muddy tennis shoes in the foyer, the half empty bags of chips under the couch, the rinse and roll of the washer, the groan of the garage door, the exhaustion under your eyes, the cracked leather of your laptop bag, the onion and garlic on my fingers, the bubbling quiche in the oven, the swishy swish of the dishwasher, and find it when my head sinks into the pillow. Cupped next to my tired hands in your toasty palms, pressed beside my feet under your calves. It's one paragraph, just one paragraph, one sentence, one long sentence. Man, you've described marriage in a nutshell. That I think that was beautiful.
Thank
I
you.
love that writing.
I'm glad you like it. Because that's what marriages are, after years, because it's not that it's not a one day affair that you go to see a movie, you're thrilled, you come back, you meet a friend, you have some drinks, or you went to dinner with them, and then you come back. It's day after day, hour after hour of living with the same person.
Right.
And then you sometimes question that whether I made a right choice. And when you live with a person, however much you are in love or however romantic your marriage might be, there are times when you feel like, oh my gosh, maybe I didn't make the right choice, maybe because our interests don't match, or we're too busy, or things like that. But then that grain of reality remains.
Yeah,
And at some point in the day, or maybe the next day, the thing hits you that, yes, this is what I am here for. And this is the little things that, spouses do for each other. Those then ultimately form the basis for a marriage to last.
that's true, and that's how it's very nicely written. I mean, I can't believe it's like one long sentence in one paragraph, and pretty much sums up what it's all about.
Yeah.
And I'm wanting to accept that. The one question I have is, did you decide the sequence of the 54 stories, how they're going to flow, which comes after which, or did your publisher? How did that work?
Yeah, that was my biggest challenge, because I was thinking I'm touching on so many things. There
Mm-hmm.
is motherhood, there is gender discrimination, there is misogyny, there is marriage, and there is the relationship between a mother-in-law and her daughter-in-law. There's desire, abandonment. Like there are so many things. What do I do? So, and it was up to me. The publisher was they didn't determine what they like. Whatever you want to do, it's your collection, however you want to, because it's ultimately your idea that should flow through, that should shine through the book. So I had a difficult time doing that, because it was and so spread out, because
Yeah.
some stories are happening in Ohio, some are in Paris, some are
Mm-hmm.
in New York, then some are in Delhi, and like, oh, then I thought of maybe dividing the book into two parts, that maybe
Mm-hmm.
I'll keep the India stories together and then
No.
the US stories. But then, like, no, that will become, people will get so
Yeah.
tired of just
Yeah.
reading India and then reading about the same a
Yeah.
woman who's in the US. And sometimes there's intersection, because a woman from India is in the US, so where do I fit
Yes.
those? So I thought that and then there was the progression part also, that do I want to show that it's first base the stories by age, that
Mm-hmm.
first there will be the girl stories, then a young woman, then maybe a woman who's mature, has her own children, or then the grown up children. And I thought, I kept on thinking, and mulling that idea over in my head. Then I made a spreadsheet and listed down all the stories, and I said, what is the
Wow.
theme here? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
motherhood, desire, marriage, childlessness. What is it? So then I thought that then I again thought that maybe I'll club the stories of motherhood together, of marriage together. Then again, I thought, no, no, no. It's like us. These are all snippets. These are vignettes. These are not really chapters. So it might be a good idea to sprinkle them here and there. So that's
Yes.
what I did. So if we notice, I thought that I'll pick a couple stories. So I picked a couple stories about marriage, put them together, a
Yeah.
couple about motherhood, then together, then a couple about the mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relationship. So that's how I did. So, people are not, the readers are not, bored or bogged down by
Yeah.
what's going on here. It's
Mm-hmm.
just to make it freshen up. And also, I kind of imagined it like a quilt, like when you sew a quilt,
Yes.
you'll put patches together, right? You'll put different patterns together. They don't have to match, but
Mm-hmm.
it is the diversity, or they're being different from each other. That's what makes it a quilt. So in my mind, each story is a swath in that quilt, and
Yeah.
that's how I just knitted them together. And
I
I wasn't
you
sure.
know it flows beautifully, and that was top on my mind when I finished your book is how did you pick this flow? And man, the first two stories, the scoop, they give a punch and then hold your attention. And whoever I don't want to give it away, but those two stories hit me right there in the gut. And then it flowed from there. You're right, you have a couple of stories clubbed together, but then the flow, I think, is seems uninterrupted, even though they are different narratives and stories and anecdotes and located in different places. Yeah, that was the thing. How did you even manage to weave this, necklace of pearls, of 54 pearls, literally, and let it flow? That was, I'm sure, one of the biggest challenges after you finish writing. So,
I am so glad it worked, because that was the thing I was skeptical of till the very end. I wanted to partition the book. I went through several different ideas, but then my gut feeling was that no, I don't want them to stick to a theme. I want to disperse them, in a way that to surprise the reader, really, that okay, here I'm reading about a girl, gender discrimination, then here's a married woman, and
mhm.
then again here is a daughter-in-law who is suffering in a marriage. So that's how I decided, and I'm glad it worked. Thank you.
Yeah, it looks beautiful. Yeah, I think you defined it correctly. It's like a quilt. It can have so many different designs, but the whole sum total is beautiful when it's all finished. Um, the ubiquitous question now is, what next?
So next is my chapbook is coming out in summer of this year. So that
Congratulations.
is not different stories. It's like a not a novella, but a thinner version of that. It's a thin chapbook, and it's one story and told in 10 chapters.
Ah,
So so now I just thought of making a progression into the longer sort of fiction. So
right, right.
not novel there yet, because novel would, yeah, require a lot of thought and research, and
Yeah.
maybe I'll get there someday. But for now, I'm just progressing from short flash into a longer story. So this is a story which is based in India again. So it's
Hmm.
based in India, and characters are girls again, but it's
Right.
the story of these girls from the beginning. It's told in 10 chapters.
Okay.
So and it's titled Skin Over Milk.
Skin over milk.
Skin Over Milk. Yes.
Wow. I'm imagining that. That's
Yes.
in every household.
Yes.
And that's the one thing I don't want on my tea.
Exactly. I don't want that either. I want to take that out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, well,
So that's
congratulations. Something to look forward to. And after reading this, for all our audience members, this is the book. It's called Morsels of Purple. And here's your author, if you can see it. Do you, by any chance, have a website and you could spell it out for us?
yeah. So my Twitter handle, I don't know why I created that, but it is. I mean, it is at Puny Fingers.
Could you spell it for
So
us?
at PUNY fingers, FINGERS puny fingers. That's my Twitter handle, and my website is saraspunyfingers.com. So SARASPUNYFINGERS.com.
Wonderful. And I think I will open it up. Unless you have something to say and conclude, we'll open it up for questions if we have any audience member questions.
Uh, yeah, I think I would like to thank you again, and the DC South Asian Film Festival Inc. For agreeing for picking me out for the interview, and I'm glad to be here. And of course, I would, love for the readers and the audience to purchase the book and read the stories. And yeah, that's right. That's the Twitter and the website handle. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm open to questions now. If anybody has any questions, I will be happy to answer.
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So I have a question. Can you explain the title and how you came up with?
Yes.
Yes, the title was again a big challenge because of uh, the nature of the stories, how short they are, and how different from each other. So they are really like small bites or more cells that are to be consumed. So that's why I came with the word morsels, and purple was because purple, is a color with many connotations. It represents so many things. It represents royalty, it represents magic, but one of the connotations is also feminism and gender equality, because it is one of the colors of International Women's Day.
Yes.
So so that's why purple also it was used to signify gender equality in uh, early 1900s, when women were struggling to get their rights. So that's how purple signified that also. So that's how I came up with the color purple. And morsels of purple is because my collection is centered on women, and striving for gender equality and equal position for women. So that's how it came up to be.
Yeah, and also I think purple, I mean, without dwelling on religion as such, it's considered holy enough in all the religions of the world. If you see Christianity, they use purple, the shroud, and for special occasion, then you have, sometimes the masjids, the mosques, they drape on purple. And then for celebrations, the Hindus, they drape in purple too, the different deities. So purple is, I didn't realize that's where your purple came from. I mean, purple came from International Women's, and it's a fantastic color. But yeah, that was an excellent question.
Yes, I've been asked that question too, and it took a long time for me to come up with a title that encompasses, or without giving away what's in the book. It's just a hint of what the book might be.
Right. It's a wonderful book. I would highly recommend everybody to read it. And I'm sure, especially the Indian diaspora, the immigrant community, have a lot to identify with in the book. Um, Both from if you have had roots or spent some time in India, and for all the American dreamers who have come here, achieved the dreams, are still achieving the dreams, or have reached the end of your dream and ready to retire. There's something for everybody in this book. That's the beauty of it. Do we have any other questions, Nigna? None as of now, but I will let you take us home now, unless you have something to say, anything more to add, and we'll call it a day after that. That's
Yeah,
you.
it was great talking to you, Mira. I understand you are an actor, so that's another art that I have. Of course, an artist. That
Thank
is
you.
art that I have never ever delved into, but I'm really in awe of every artist of whether it be stage or writing or painting. So I'm glad to meet you.
Likewise,
And
creativity is, it's a gift. I think you're born with the nucleus of it, and then you develop it. And there's so many different creative um, endeavors, and creations we can do. Somebody can dance, someone can sing, someone can write. But when it comes to acting, I truly believe the whole basis of that is the writer. If the writer does not fill up the blank pages, there's nothing for the actor to bank on, to dwell on, to deliver. So writing, I think, is the biggest challenge, to literally create like a painting, something out of
mhm.
nothing. So,
I
and
think
that,
it's vice versa. If the writers don't do it, if the actors don't do justice to the script, then again, it's a failure. It's. I think it's a mutual thing.
well, thank you for that, and appreciate it. And maybe, we'll wait for your screenplay sooner or later, or a stage play. Like I said, for me, that story, which, one of the stories that, even though I like the other one about the mundaneness of our existence, the wind, the other story is the house, which I thought was an old lady. For me, I visualize the way you've described it. I visualize it as a short film. So,
Yeah. There are
hopefully-
subtle hints here and there, like the gray paint peeling, or I think in my crevices. There are very subtle hints, but again,
yes,
it's not given away.
exactly. And that's why I thought it is an aging lady, and their skin is like that. So that's
Yes.
why, and that's why it was very mystical. I'm like, what is this? So,
Yeah.
so that's what your
Thanks for
creativity will.
giving it all that attention, that to figure out, because sometimes people will, okay, didn't get it, but don't think about it, but at least you gave it a thought. So really,
Yeah,
thanks
that's
for
one
doing that.
story I had to read 2 times to get it, and still didn't. So then, I mean, I'm an avid reader, so I love reading. That's, instead of for all the acting I do, I don't like to sit and watch anything. But reading, because reading, I think, gives each one the ability to paint their own portrait or picture by,
Mhm.
joining the words that are on paper. Like Harry Potter in a movie is so different from Harry Potter when you read the book,
Yes.
because what our imagination brings around our head after reading that is very different. So reading, I cherish reading, and that's why I loved your book. And I'm now that I, read it for prepping for this interview, I'm going to go back and read it with thorough relish after this.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for
Thanks,
being our
Mira.
guest. You're welcome, and wish you the very best and lots more successes in your creations. On behalf of DCSAACI, thank you very much from Manoj Singh ji and Sangeeta ji, and from Snigdha. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Nikta and Manoj, also. Thank you.
Alrighty.